Hey, does anyone remember when the most fun part of school was when you got taken to the swimming baths at your local leisure centre and were able to just dive onto the inflatables in the pool and piss about in a swimming lesson? Does anyone else remember at Christmas time when the school would take you all into the assembly hall and just stick a film on the huge monitor and you would all just watch a film instead of having to do lessons? But now, unfortunately, the most fun part of the school year actually happens every day, and it's as soon as they leave the classroom, they get to pull out their phone and go on their phone.
When the bell rings, it's quite exciting because I haven't been on my phone, so it's like a moment of relief just to go on it.
Most schools in the UK have banned kids from using phones in the classroom to help them to learn, which I think is actually really good, because I think that screen addiction and tech addiction is very bad and it isn't really conducive to learning. And recent studies also back this up, that kids who use iPads and laptops to learn certain things like reading and writing and maths actually have less cognitive ability than when people do it on pen and paper. Schools in my country are mandating digital activities for kids. Instead of reading and writing in a workbook, they play word games on a computer. Instead of doing math equations in a book, they play math games on a computer. Even the blackboard has been replaced by a giant TV. So screens are everywhere, not only in the pockets of these pupils, but also where the blackboard used to be, right? The teacher is using a PowerPoint presentation to give information to the kids. There's laptops, there's tablets, everything is done on a computer. And look, I'm 23 years old. I remember this well because we used to do quite a lot of stuff on the computer, but that was only when you were doing IT or something like that. Pretty much everything else when I was at school was done in a book. It was written down with pen and paper, and there were textbooks and you had to read the textbooks, and everything was more analog and tactile and you could feel and touch the material that you were learning. But the real issue here is that schools are habituating young children to a world of technology, introducing them very early on to rely on screens and technology, which will transfer over into their later life. And don't get me wrong, things like Word and PowerPoint can be helpful to help you to learn certain things, and visual animations and things and graphs can really help you as well. But it's the normalization of having to stare at a screen in order to learn or to, in fact, achieve anything in life. And as studies have shown, the actual act of picking up a pen and writing down information and working things out in a physical book with paper is actually better at reinforcing learning than watching it on a screen. It's screen time all the time. Kids are groomed to be addicted to digital technologies from a young age. No wonder they're acting out, can't focus, and have no social skills. The younger generation is doomed.
I've had enough of this. This punishment stuff is going to stop.
You're not gonna tell me what I'm gonna do and not do?
I am now the alpha.
Bro. That's not how this works. I am the teacher.
The alpha takes priority over the teacher.
A study here released in 2024 found that children derive a deeper meaning from printed text than screens. There is something to be said about the physical book. I remember in school when we had to back our books, which is where you actually got to be a little bit creative and you could bind your book in some sort of like visual picture essentially. So for like geography, we would have one that I made where it was all like maps and stuff and you would have to draw it and it had to look really nice. And for maths, I had like a different one, and history, etc. It's the act of actually putting some creative effort in and something of your own that really reinforces it. Like I still remember having to back my books, and therefore I remember using the books. And I guess as an extension, I'll remember a bit more about geography and history and maths. But like I don't remember any math games websites that I used to play on when I was in school, because yes, we did have computers as well, and I was using websites in certain math lessons to learn new things. But the main things I remember from maths is writing things down in my actual notebook. Like, my God, what happened to just writing down in a notebook? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think I've still got them in my cupboard. I've got all of my old notebooks from when I was like 12 years old on everything that I learned, and I still remember doing that in school. And I don't see what the problem is with that, and I feel like the studies are showing that when you actually use pen to paper, it reinforces the learning better than using screens. But again, worse than that, it's just getting people normalized with using screens to help you with everything in life. And if you introduce tech as this crutch that you have to rely on, even though in the past we've never needed tech, it's not making anything more efficient, it's just making things worse. It's laziness, right? It's the teachers can't be asked to have to mark things with pen and paper, and they can't be asked to take all the sheets and stuff. It's all just a PowerPoint presentation. I just don't think this kind of direction that we're moving in is actually helping kids at all, and it's just introducing them to technology at a super young age that'll carry on into adulthood and eventually lead to an unhealthy digital addiction.
With research showing that a quarter of UK teens are glued to their smartphones for more than 5 hours a day, it's clear that something needs to be done.
One of the things that concerns me the most about the widespread adoption of smartphones in children and adolescents is its impact on sleep, mood, depression, anxiety, attention.
And as a consequence of this change in the younger generation, especially Gen Z and is it Gen Alpha, the one after me? Not too sure. All this technology and screens actually starting from the education level up throughout the younger teenage years and into adulthood is actually causing them to develop an addiction to not only laptops and iPads, but to their phones. And this is the big problem we have now with a lot of schools and younger kids in the UK, is that they don't get enough sleep. They're staying up super late until 2-3 o'clock in the morning, just scrolling, doom scrolling through social media, and then it affects them in school, right? They come in and they're even more sleep deprived, they can't concentrate, they can't focus, and then what happens? It's an endless cycle. They continue to be trapped in this world of technology. They go home, they use their phone. They come to school, they have to be on a laptop. They're using iPads. It's all this post-COVID stuff where there's no sheets, there's no paper. So kids can't escape it, right? I mean, I feel bad for them. You know, the kids in schools now, they are constantly surrounded hour after hour by screens and tech. And, you know, even I've had huge problems in my life with screen addiction, and that's part of why I made this channel and deleted social media, etc., and teach people about this. But kids now have it even worse, right? When I was in school, I was mainly using pen and paper for everything, as I've said. But for these kids, I mean, when they're my age, it's gonna be horrendous. They're gonna be completely reliant on technology for their everyday life. Before I carry on this video, if you appreciate what I do and you find this kind of discussion valuable, then go check out the top link in the description. It's a completely free school community where I post stuff like this, similar, and you can just chat to me and stuff like that. I'm gonna grow it more in the future. Cheers.
What is there to do all weekend? I felt more comfortable being at school because I was occupied by so much stuff to do, and I just have my phone, but that's all.
And as a further consequence of this early introduction of technology in schools, we're seeing a complete breakdown of ability to not be stimulated. As you can see, this poor kid is distraught because he doesn't have anything to do over the weekend. He's had his phone taken off of him by his parents, which is a great thing to do. He's very young, obviously, and he doesn't know what to do with himself. He's been so used to being hyper-stimulated all the time, even at school. He says he prefers it at school when he had so much to do, because they're introducing kids to technology so early and they're getting hooked on it from a very young age. And when they bring it home, they have like literal withdrawal symptoms. This is really bad stuff, right? This is ruining kids' lives. We need to solve this. Is it true teachers can tell if a child had too much screen time at home when they're at school? Does using them for educational, creative purposes count as too much screen time too, or is it just more games? I notice a weaker vocabulary because no one is talking to them. This is the type of behavior that shows up on evaluation. Screen time used instead of parenting shows up whenever a student doesn't get their way and can result in an inability to make friends. Ultimately, if you use screen time instead of socialization, your child will have a harder time everywhere unless you aren't neglecting your kid and control their access to addictive devices. Again, it's like what I said earlier on. When you are introducing technology at a very young age for kids in schools and also outside of schools, okay? We're talking about the iPad kids, parents who just appease their children by giving them the device. it actually shows up. These are teachers talking here, by the way, and they are saying that they have an inability to make friends, they're anxious, they have, social issues, they can't really speak properly. A lot of this is a symptom of being essentially brought up and having their mind, which is so plastic at this young age, be warped by the use of social media. Kids are supposed to be playing with each other, they're supposed to be learning from each other, they're supposed to be fighting each other, okay, and then learning from the mistakes, and then socializing and being together. That's all what humans are about. That's how humans are supposed to be. That's how our brains are wired to be. We're not solitary animals. We're supposed to be together in a tribe, in a pack. And when you have a kid who's basically removed from that tribe and brought up by this weird virtual piece of technology that's run by an algorithm, an AI algorithm, which has the sole mission of retention, of keeping eyes glued to the screen as long as possible so that you can get delivered more ads. You have an AI that has that purpose, bringing up a child that needs to be with other children and playing and learning, then of course you have problems like this arise. And the whole point of this video and why I'm drawing attention to this is because it's not just outside of school where it happens, it's inside of the schools. And this is why I think it's good that a lot of schools in Britain are actually banning phones from schools. And that's going to be an unpopular opinion. Loads of people are going to hate me for saying that, but it's true. When you get a bit older, you realize that this technology, it's detrimental in almost every way. It really is sad how many apps literally have gambling addiction specialists, consultants, and other psychologists on their payroll, but we don't consider the app's effect to be related to addictive behavior unless it's really bad for some reason. And even then, people don't seem to realize it's a feature and not a bug for these companies. And going back to the companies, they hire gambling addiction specialists, okay? They have a UX team and a CRO team that is thousands strong, of the best in the world, and their sole mission is, how do we keep people on the app for longer so that we can show them more ads and charge advertisers a higher CPM and thus make billions and billions of pounds more per year. That's the only goal, and they don't care if you're an 8-year-old child, they don't care if you're a 65-year-old grandmother, whoever you are, it doesn't matter. If the algorithm can keep you on the app, addicted, and take up as much of your time and attention as possible, that's great for those companies. Well done, Facebook. My advice is, if you are a child watching this, get rid of social media ASAP. It's going to ruin your life. Trust me, even though you like it right now, all it's doing is it's firing your dopamine receptors at an unimaginable rate, and you will never be able to feel that level of dopamine again or novelty with anything else until you will become reliant on technology, algorithms, social media, and that is going to really negatively impact your life, your relationships, and you need to get off of it. And yeah, advice for parents and for teachers, whatever, kids need to learn from other kids and be in social interactions. And from my personal experience and from what the research shows, of the studies I've read, the actual analog learning of drawing and being creative and writing and, having your own handwriting and your own book and it's yours and you get to draw in it and you get to, that's what I used to love as a kid. Like, I used to love drawing and doodling and sketching, and I would write down my notes in a certain way and I'd highlight it, and that was all part of it. And I probably retained so much more information from school doing it that way because it was like mine, okay? It was my unique way of learning, and that analog experience really has neurological reinforcers associated with it from the research that I've read that makes it so that learning sticks more. And not only just that, but the idea of not having tech around you all the time, not constantly being surrounded by screens, just means that it's less likely that the kids are going to be addicted to technology, okay? Because it's not something that's around them all the time. So it really is just about getting back to those kind of analog roots, okay? Reading, drawing, writing. And I think what we've seen here in this video, what I've showed you, what I've talked about, is evidence that should be prioritized. So that's my advice. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you found it valuable, helpful in any way, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.